when you and I go to work, hopefully our well-being is pretty good. We're looking forward to working. We've all got the usual stuff, the baggage that we all carry. But, that being accepted, our well-being is, that's our default state.
Having worked with the leading change agents like Bill Gates and Richard Branson, what can we learn from their style of leadership?
The word that came to mind straight away was authentic. I started working with them in the late 90s, and that was just when leading edge companies were starting to know about, what do they call it, corporate social responsibility and things other than just their business and making money. And you always kind of have a question in your mind, are they exploiting this? I mean, the work we were doing was work on HIV, TB, and malaria. Are they just using this to get a bit of publicity or to boost their brand or something? Or are they really in the game? And those two examples in particular, they're still doing the same stuff. Bill Gates is with his Bill and Melissa, although Melissa's going somewhere else, I think. And Richard Branson, the same. He's still engaged in these things. And the other thing that I noticed was I did a corporate day with Virgin Holidays with Paul McKenna. He asked me to come with him, and it was the day in January when apparently most people booked their holidays, and we were over in somewhere near Blue Water or something, and we were just running a marquee like a yurt and sort of hypnotizing people into their perfect holiday. It was just a public relations thing, but quite a few of the Virgin flight attendants were there, and I got to talk to them over lunch. And what came across was what I've noticed before. They all called Branson Richard. It was like they were talking about their uncle or their friend, and they say, well, we love him when we're flying because he'll turn up unannounced and serve dinner in the first class. He'd fly with them to New York or wherever they're going. Now, that's an example of being your true self, which is being authentic, and walking the talk.
How does employee well-being impact workplace culture for better or worse?
Well, this is when I said, some of my answers might surprise you a bit. But when I read that question, I know exactly how important it is, but I would put it round the other way. I would say, how does workplace culture impact upon, employee well-being? Because, when you and I go to work, hopefully our well-being is pretty good. We're looking forward to working. We've all got the usual stuff, the baggage that we all carry. But, that being accepted, our well-being is, that's our default state, to have well-being. And if we get to work and we suddenly find our well-being has disappeared, well, that's because somebody's stolen from us. And the only people who can steal from you at work are the bosses. It's their culture. And they may not know what they're doing.
Which de-stress techniques can business leaders implement in the workplace?
Well, I mean, the list is quite a long one here. The first thing, it goes back to your last question. There has to be an engaging culture there, because that's where the stress is going to come from, or that's where some of the stress is going to come from. First of all, they've got to view their employees as part of their family, as part of their team, rather than employees just to tick so many boxes in a day. And that means they have to, work-life balance is always the thing that people, worry about most. And that was even before COVID. It's even more so now. Some people who've got a long commute say, they're making a sacrifice. Okay, I don't mind commuting 3 hours a day because it means my kids can go to the school it's the good school, or we can live in the country or whatever. So we make sacrifices for our work. But there will be a point where we suddenly decide the sacrifice isn't worth it. So that's why, the business leaders have got to look at the culture. They've got to offer flexible working, especially now. I don't see everybody coming back to work 5 days a week like they used to. And people talk about a hybrid approach, and that seems to be how most companies are moving. But there are some who are digging their heels in and saying, no, we can't operate like that. We've got to have everybody here. And those are the companies that probably want you there not for 8 hours, but probably 12 hours, because they're doing important work. Thinking particularly of the financials here, but I'm sure there are others as well. And then, I was, when I was working in the corporate sector, at a senior level, which I did, I've been an HR manager as well as being a medical director. I work for an American company, and I think that in some ways they're ahead of us. In other ways, they're behind. But one of the ways they're ahead of us is that it's very normal to have what they would call an EAP program, which is Employee Assistance Program. They started off, I think, in the 70s. It was more about offering rehab for people who are, had alcohol or drug problems. But now it's spread. And if an employee is going to work and they're worried about, their relationship, they're worried about their kids, their health, they're worried about their own mental health, there's this confidential service that they can queue into. And that one of my responsibilities in my previous life, as I call it, that was one of the things that I was in charge of, and I saw it firsthand, the benefit that something like that can have. And I would say that that's probably still pretty rare in the UK. So that's one thing. And then, if you're going into the traditional well-being type stuff, well, the Dutch and the Swedish, I think, are very good at this. They designate parts of the workplace to what they call a sanctuary, and people can go there to meditate or just to read a book. And they can go there more or less whenever they want to. And of course, people can be taught how to be meditation. There are breathing techniques that can be taught. And perhaps one of the simplest things that business leaders could do here to de-stress the workplace is to use a word which they won't like, but it's called unplug. And unplug, because a friend of mine who's a TV presenter and we put this online thing together, we called it Unplug. It was just about persuading people of the benefits of switching off some of their, wonderful high-tech gadgets that they work with, because what the experts here are seeing is that mental well-being, mental health has never been worse than it is now, despite all the benefits we have of our culture and all the rest of it. The rates are just going up and up and up, and it seems to have accelerated once they started, bringing out, first it was the BlackBerry, which you probably won't remember that, but that was called the Crackberry. And literally, every single business executive, including me, we would have this in our hand. It was about this size, tiny little buttons. But we thought that was making us feel really important. And I can remember getting BlackBerry messages at that time from people at, Christmas, from the States. And I know that's a holiday there, so it wasn't like, it wasn't, and they'd still be sending these little long notes, which would be taking forever for them to type out. And that's the kind of thing that should be unplugged. We've all got to be online. We've all got to answer our emails every day. We've all got to have Zoom calls, and fortunately some of them we can enjoy. But we can't do all of these things at the same time. Because in psychology terms, they tell us, I don't know how they work this out, but they say we can only think about 7 things at once, or do 7 things at once. Well, if you've got your news alerts up on your computer, if you're typing an email and you're checking your social media at the same time, there's not much brain power left there for actually doing something creative. And that's what companies want. One of your questions is about this, but they've got computers who can remember stuff better than human beings. That's AI. But the one thing computers can't do yet, and hopefully never, they can't come up with the infinite creativity that people can when they're in the right environment to connect to whatever wisdom this is that's inside them.